How to make your very own Google Sheets Athlete Daily Wellness Questionnaire to level up your sports science efforts for you and your team. This three-step process of creating and organizing the Google form to making the daily wellness dashboard and organizing all of the data in the Google Sheet and how to get it on your athletes' phones. Now, I'm going to be doing this all completely from scratch, and there's some nuance and context to this. I'm going to be explaining a lot of the details because we are going to make this once, all the formulas once. And all you have to do is basically just update the athletes' names, and you can use the same sheet again and again and again. So this might get a little bit slow at points, but stick with me. This is a lot of work in the front end with way less work in the back end. So let's get into it. And a lot of these details I have learned from doing this for literally years, how to make this as efficient and effective as possible. So, first, we have our form, Athlete Wellness Questionnaire. Please fill out before noon each day. All right, boom. And then we have the title here automatically. So, first, understanding how Google Sheets and Google Forms or Google Sheets and Excel work is it's very good at doing exactly what you tell it to do. And we need to find the data based on the date and the athlete's name. Okay. And I learned this the hard way where we need to set up this form with as little athlete typing in themselves as possible. And I'll show you what I mean. So for athlete name, okay, athlete name. Instead of having a short answer where let's say the athlete's name is John Smith, if they just miss one letter in that at any point in time throughout an entire season, it's going to recognize that as a completely different athlete. So for name, the drop down menu is going to be a very good way to combat this. So let's say John Smith. Next, let's do like Joe Schmo, Allison Smith, and then Jessica Alba for the rest of my millennials out there. Next, we have date. Okay. So although Google Forms automatically timestamps this with the date and the time, we basically just need the date. Okay. And this is this date function. They don't have to type anything in. They just have to click it on the little calendar icon. So next, I have 5 questions that I ask in my daily wellness questionnaires: sleep quantity, sleep quality, energy, soreness, stress. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. Next, we have sleep quantity, and this is going to be the only one that the athlete is actually going to type in, short answer, but you can make a description to help guide the athlete in what they should or shouldn't do. So we can say, please answer to the nearest 0.5 hours and only put numbers. For example, quote 7.5 and not 7.5 hours. Okay. And then this will be a short answer. So everything from here, sleep quality, energy, soreness, stress, is going to be a linear scale, or what Google Forms calls a linear scale. So sleep quality, and then we can also add a description. So we can say low is poor sleep, high is great sleep, 1 to 7. And then we can say poor, great. Duplicate this because it's going to be linear scale again. So we can say energy. Low is no energy. High is a lot of energy. So we can say a little, a lot. And these aren't the scientific terms. I would phrase this a little bit differently for more understanding and a little bit more repeatability. But for the sake of this video, energy, and then we have soreness. Low is no soreness. High is very sore. Okay. A little, a lot. And then our last one is going to be stress. Okay. And we can make all of these required. So if the athlete leaves one blank, then it won't let them submit it. And to double check our work, we can click this little preview button, and you can see what I mean with the drop down. So now they don't have to type in anything, they just click their name. With this, it's just automatically the calendar, so they can't accidentally mess it up. We can type in 7, and then they just click this. So we're minimizing how much the athlete needs to actually do to fill this out. Okay. And notice this not published here. So it's not accepting any responses. So once it looks how we want it to look, all of the questions, we can exit this out and we can hit publish. So anyone with the link, assuming that no one is going to try to hack your wellness questionnaire, we're going to publish it, and boom, it's published. Okay. So next, we have to set up where we want the responses to go. So click response and link to sheet, and then just create a new sheet. And now it's automatically going to be automatically populate to here. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is quickly just make some fake data that we can use to guess and check our formulas in the actual dashboard. So this copy link button, this is eventually what you'll be sending to your athletes, but we can just copy, make a new tab, paste it, and then let's just fill out some data really quick. So John Smith, let's do this for yesterday. He slept 7 hours. He slept great. He's feeling good. He's not that sore, but he's kind of stressed. Boom. So now, if we double check here, we can see here's what I just filled out. Okay. So let's do a few more actually. Let's do John Smith for today. He slept a lot, but it wasn't that good a sleep. And he's kind of mid, kind of average on everything else. All right, so now we have some fake data for John Smith for yesterday, today, and then I filled out one entry for the other 3 athletes for today. Okay, so now we are in our Google sheet, and first, this is part of the process in making this as reproducible as possible. Okay, so we can just call this responses, and then we can say like fall 2024, for example. If you wanted to recreate the sheet, and then just change the date and you can track this over time. I like having a reference key that I can just keep all of the athlete names in one spot, so it's a lot easier to change them in the future. So first we had John Smith, then we had Joe Schmo, then we had Allison Smith, and we had Jessica Alba. Okay, and you'll see what I'm doing here in a sec. All right, next, wellness. Okay. So we're going to leave one column open, A, you'll see why. We're going to have our average at the top just so it's the easiest to find. So we had sleep quantity. We had sleep quality. We had energy, soreness, and stress. Okay. You can make all these bold, copy, paste. And then now we need the athlete's name. And this is all going to come together with the formatting. Just trust me. Okay. So at the top of this, in our helper column, I'll explain what a helper column is, equals, and then let's click on John Smith. So this is reference key B3. Boom. Okay. So this cell is now saying John Smith. And with the rest of our helper columns, we're going to do enter and then click up. So now A9 is going to read A8, and then we can copy and paste this formula down, down, down. So A12 is reading A11, A11 is reading A10, et cetera, okay? And then on this one, equals, let's go to the left. So now B8 is reading A8. So all of these are going to say John Smith. And here's the cool part is if I change this to John Doe, well, this automatically changes it and updates it. Okay, so that's the value of having a reference key, because you want to change one thing, one spot, and it change everywhere else instead of, imagine if I had to go back and change all of these to John Doe. If I wanted to change that for a new athlete, let's say next year. Okay, so there's that. So next, we're going to add a row, and we need to find the athlete data based on their name and their date. Okay, so we have the name set up. So now we need the date, and a week is 7 days. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so equals today, parenthesis, parenthesis. So see how this is already saying, today is, December 10th. And the row below it, because we have 2 rows, equals and then up. Okay, so again, J2 is reading J1, and J1 is today. Okay, so now let's just reformat these so you can follow along. So let's go to format. Let's go to number, custom date. I want the top just to be the name, or sorry, just the month and the date. And then below this, I want this to be the day of the week, just so it's a little easier to follow along. Okay, we can bold both of these, and I want these to be in the center. So now in the column over, let's go enter -1. Okay, so J1 is reading today, and then I1 is reading today -1. So that's why this is showing up as the 9th. And then same thing, let's go enters up. And then here's a really cool thing about formatting where you can highlight. So these are bold, and these I changed the formats. This basically copies the formatting, and I want to apply that to these 2 cells. Look at that. So now I have today -1 here. So if I copy and paste both of these, so now this is going to be yesterday -1 -1. So hopefully you're following along, and we can copy and paste all of these. So this is automatically at midnight and 1 second, this cell today is automatically going to update, which is going to update the rest of these. So you are always going to get the most recent 7 days worth of data. Okay. Now we have to find John Smith's data. So index and match are going to be our go-to formulas for this. And I have other Excel tutorials if you want to find those on my channel, but index, okay? So reference, basically, where do I want to look for the data? Well, I want to look in responses, and then it's going to go here. And then if you just hold Control Shift and then hit down and down, I call this like it's forevering, or basically it's looking at all of the data, or where it could possibly be. Comma. Next, what row? So how far down to look for the data? Let's do it based on the athlete's name and also the date. So match. First, I want us to find the combination that has both the athlete's name and the and sign and this date, comma. Okay. So now the range, where do I want us to look for it? Let's look for the name because that was first in all of these, and sign. Let's look for the date in all of these. So for John Smith and today, it's going to find the row that has both John Smith and 1210. Okay, comma. And then the search type, 0 just means an exact match. You're basically always going to use a 0 for search type. Okay, and then column, where we are right now, column. So that's these numbers. So how far over in the responses do I want us to go? And that's basically which of the 5 categories are we looking at? So let's go match. Look for sleep quantity. I want you to look for sleep quantity within all of these headers. And you have to select all of them, again, B to H, because we're looking for B to H in the very, very beginning. Okay. So look for all of the headers, and I want it to be an exact match. Close it, hit enter, and look, we have John Smith's sleep quantity is a 9, and for today, look, it was a 9. So the last thing we have to, well, we have 2 more things, but the last thing we have to do to make this formula copy and pasteable is get the money signs on it. So basically, if I were to move this formula 1 cell down, we noticed that, B2 went to B3 right here. but we always want it to be looking in the same exact spot because, for example, the first is always going to be here in B2. So F4, the button F4 is going to be your best friend. So if we just hit F4, notice how all these money signs pop up, which means that you can copy and paste this formula anywhere and it's always going to stay B2 and it's always going to stay H106. But for the name, I want this to be able to move down because we have, multiple athletes that we have to look for. But I always want it to stay in our helper column A. So if we hit F4, 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 we only have the money sign on the A, so it's always going to stay in column A, but the 9 is going to change. And for the date, it's actually going to be the opposite because I always want this to stay in row 1, but I want the date to move sideways. So if we hit F4, F4, the J has no money sign, so it'll move to I if we want, but it's always going to stay in row I. But where we are looking for the name and the date is always going to stay the exact same, so we're just going to F4 this once, so there's money signs on everything. And last, the sleep quantity. I want this to move down, but I don't want this to move left and right. So we're going to F4, F4, F4. So the C is always going to stay the same, but the numbers can change. And then Google Sheets is pretty smart, so it already knows that we're only going to look for this in the headers, okay? So now, if I were to copy and paste this downwards, it's going to find this athlete's data. So notice how it's looking for stress and it's looking for, John Smith. And again, how the sheet is really good at doing exactly what you tell it to do. If, let's say, I was a little bit lazy and I typed in stress level here, well, stress level doesn't exist. Only stress exists. Okay. And same thing, if I were to change John Smith to, like, let's say 2 H's, well, nothing is going to pop up because there's not John Smith with 2 H's kind of right here. So again, all of this work up front helps us in the future to make this as copy and pasteable as possible, okay? So there's one more thing we have to do to this formula. So I made some data for John Smith for yesterday, and look at how it already pops up. Again, it's finding an I, but these are all staying the same. So if I copy and paste all of this one more time, there's going to be an error because he doesn't have any data for, let's say, the 8th, because I only filled out John Smith for the 9th and the 10th. So if an athlete, misses a day or whatever it is, all these error signs are pretty ugly, honestly. But there's a nice formula called if error. So at the very beginning of the formula, right here, if error parenthesis, so the value. So first, execute all of this. Let's make this a little bit more readable. I want you to execute all of this, comma, but if there is an error, be blank. And that's just the quote. And notice how there's a formula right here. We can see it, but it's coming up as blank. And we can copy and paste this. And notice how the errors go away once all of these say if error in the beginning, but these ones don't. So let's copy and paste our if errors right here, and we can do it for the rest of the week. So now all of these now have formulas, and let's format this really quick so we can copy and paste them. Okay. So John Smith, let's make this a little bit prettier. We can merge and center. Let's tilt it up just a little bit. We can bold it. It's already bolded. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay. We can border all of these guys to be a little bold on the outside. And then we can take all of this. I want these to be aligned in the center because that just looks better. Let's do all borders on the inside, and then on the outside, let's make these kind of bold. Okay. So now we can copy and paste this for each athlete. We have 4 athletes, but remember how there's no money signs here. So if we move this down, let's see, we move this down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So instead of B3, this is now going to be B9. But we know in the reference key that the names are in B3, B4, B5, and B6. So if we change this This is B3. So the next athlete I wanted to start at B4. Look, the name Joe Schmo pops up and all of his data pops up. So if this is B4, then we got to go B5. Allison Smith, all of her data pops up. And if we go B5 to B6, boom, we have all of Jessica Alba's data. Okay. So now, again, that's one formula. This is one formula for all of these and for all of these, and it's going to pop up automatically. You can change the athletes' names. If we go, let's go like, I don't know, Jessica Simpson. And like it's already going to change, but because Jessica Simpson doesn't have any data, it's not going to pop up. Okay. So we can just change this back to Jessica Alba. All right. Now, the last thing we need to do is we can hide this. So right click and then hide, because that's our helper column. We don't need to look at it. We just need to, that's just helping these formulas kind of find the athlete's name. The last thing we have to do is for our average if. So instead of doing averages, where we just click sleep quantity for one athlete, comma, sleep quantity for one, and for one, yes, you can get an average, but that's not going to be a very efficient way over the long term. But there's a little bit of nuance here because we need to find data not only going down, but also we need to make one formula that will also read left to right. Okay. So bear with me. But the formula here, we're going to do average if. Okay. So we only need to average based on the date. And then we're going to use the type of data to help us go left and right. All right. So first, average if. So the criteria range. So basically, what do I want to average based on? I want to average based on the date. Okay. So the range where I'm looking for the date is going to be here. Date, control shift, down, down, all of the date columns there possibly are, comma. Now the criterion. So for the date range, look at this date. Okay. And now the last thing we need to do is the average range. So this is going to be now where we look kind of left and right. So index, I want us to look for all of this data. Select it, control shift down, down. So the row is I want it to be all of the rows because I'm already looking at the rows based on the date. So the row, we're actually just going to leave blank by just doing a comma with nothing there. So now the column, left and right, that's the headers. So now we are going to match based on sleep quantity. And where do I want you to look for sleep quantity? In all of the headers. I just selected all of the headers. Comma, exact match, 0, parenthesis, 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 and boom. And because it's an average, let's get one more decimal place. Basically, what this is saying is once you find a column based on sleep quantity, sleep quality, let's look at all of the rows. Okay. But the date is going to help us average based on the rows. Just trust me, just use this formula and it'll work fine. So now we have to money sign everything that we want to change or not change, and then we're basically done. So money sign the criteria range, that's always going to stay the same, but I want the date F4. Again, I want the J to change, but I want the I to not change. I want us to always be looking in the same exact spot, F4. I want this to go down, but not sideways. So F4, F4, F4. I want the C to stay the same, but the number can change. And then this won't change because it already knows that it's the headers. Okay. So, boom. Look, we're already getting a bunch of averages. We can copy and paste this. And notice how there's only one athlete's worth of data. So this is all basically the same data. And we can copy and paste this for the rest. Okay. But oh, look, no, we have this ugly, error because there's no data. So we can do if error comma, quote, quote, boom. Copy and paste all of this. Copy and paste all 5. And now we have this nice if error in every single cell. And the last thing we got to do is we can copy and paste all this formatting, the bold, the borders, whatever it is, in the same exact area. So if I copy and paste the formulas or the formatting for, 5 by J, then I have to do the same for 5 by J. And there you have an auto sorting, auto filling wellness questionnaire. And the last thing we got to do is get it on your athlete's phone. Go back to the questionnaire, copy this link, make it shorter just to make it a little quicker. And then I will email it to myself and we will go from there. So I just emailed myself that link. You would send this to all of your athletes. Click on the link. It's going to take them to Safari. And basically, all they're going to do is this bottom button in the middle, add to home screen. And then we can just say Daily Wellness. And now it is going to automatically be added to their home screen. So now it's basically an app that automatically takes them to Safari. So every day in the morning, they just click on that app. It's right there and they just fill it out. So there you have it. Some context, some nuance, but a lot of work in the front end makes it way, way easier on the back end for you to make a reproducible and also scalable athlete wellness questionnaire.